Hey, it's Mirna from Trainers Toolbox. Welcome to the Trainers Toolbox podcast, a place where you can discover practical and effective tools and tips to make your workshops more insightful, engaging, and memorable. You are at the right place if you're looking to become the best trainer you can be and design truly impactful learning experiences. Ready? Let's dive in. Hello. Today I'm set out with Hande to explore the topic of icebreakers. So Hande Akpinar is a trainer, facilitator, a dear colleague, transformational leadership coach, who uses a blended approach to design different impactful learning experiences. She works primarily designing bespoke sessions, focuses on topics like communication skills, career navigation, change management, and leadership. All the easy topics, right? I think Hande likes her a good challenge. So we will set her with one today, talking a bit about icebreakers. Icebreakers, as we all know, come with a lot of controversy. You know, people love them, hate them. Everybody knows what's wrong about them, but nobody knows how to do them right. Everybody has tips and opinions. And there are always these questions from trainers, from facilitators, kind of like, how do I plan an icebreaker? But how do I not make it cringy? How do I make it relevant enough? How do I make it useful? How do I not turn people off by making it too silly or in some way that they feel that this session is, not useful because we are starting with this icebreaker. But at the same time, how do I build the right space for my session, that it's not icy and that it's not rigid, but that people can actually relax into it. So today what we want to explore on one side is what are the actual dynamics behind the icebreakers. So we don't go into quick solutions, but we really think, hey, what is actually happening in that room when people show up? What do we want to keep in mind as sort of a context around icebreakers? And then we do definitely want to also set into a bit more practical tips and ideas. What can we actually do to make icebreakers work? So Hande, I'll invite you that we start with maybe just unwrapping where does that ice come from? Who brings the ice into our room? What is happening there? What's up with those icebreakers that we need?
Thank you, Mirna, for the introduction. And yes, I do like a challenge. So let's get started with a subject that affects trainers, facilitators, whether you are doing it online or in person, whether it's your first time or the 1000th time, and you find yourself in a session and there appears to be some ice. So I think it's a critical question to ask. Where does this ice come from? Who brings this ice? And my experience has been everybody carries a little bit of ice with themselves when they are coming to the session. And this includes our trainers and facilitators as well. Because most of the time when we are walking into a session, we have designed, we have put in all the work, we have gone through the hoops to make it happen. We can still feel a bit unsure about how it's going to run. So we may not know our participants. We may not be very familiar with the venue we are using. And those all add into that cube of ice as different particles. So we, as trainers or facilitators, we do bring our own ice to the room as well. But most of the time, it is also our responsibility to make that ice go away, make it disappear.
Yeah, totally
Because
agree.
we are very much aware that, especially in adult learning, people come into the room, be it online or in person, with previous experiences of sessions that were not much fun for them,
Or too much fun.
or maybe too much fun for them. Yes, and there are a set of unset expectations from each of the participants. We may have a mixed bag of participants where some are eager to join in eager to take the mic and be a part of the conversation. And some people might rather fade into the background, just, learn what is being shared, listen to other people. And what happens when you put them into spotlight just because it's part of the icebreaker activity?
It can end up too pushy. And I would even argue that most of powerful learning experiences are a bit beyond control of facilitator or trainer. And the more we can let people own the part of the process and the more we can let them into the room, the better it ends up very often. But I totally agree with you. That does bring in more of ice from our side as well, because it's to a point we are letting go of control to more than we might be comfortable. And
So,
yeah.
in reality, everybody carries around their own piece of ice. And when we find ourselves in the same session, that different pieces of ice may well blend in together and become a nice pool you find yourself swimming in, or they might clash and sink the ship.
So what do we do with it? Because there is this, the word of icebreaker, everybody's like, that's not the right way. You don't go heads on and break everybody's ice. That's not the point. But how would you frame it? What would you do about it? How would you approach it, maybe?
Let's start with the word breaking the ice. That does sound a bit harsh, doesn't it? Like, a bit destructive. Whereas in our training sessions, where we are working with professionals from a wide range of backgrounds, we don't want to break things. We don't want to damage anything. We want to be building. So instead of saying, let's do an ice-breaking exercise, why not use our different sets of activities? Why not dive into our toolbox and see how to warm the room up a little bit, or how to get to know one another, how to use a series of open-ended questions without putting a label on them. Once I was designing a 3-day in-person workshop for a company, for a group of 10 managers, heads of different departments. And I was very clearly briefed not to add any silly icebreaker activities. Because, quote, they're a waste of time. Just get into the topic. You are coming here, you have 3 days, please deliver what the topic is. No silly icebreakers. Okay, no silly icebreakers.
And you were like, okay, let me cross that silly icebreaker out of my agenda.
Yeah.
Because my first item in agenda was do something silly to turn people off. It's a bit of a, yeah.
And of course, we are working with adults, which does not necessarily mean they are willing to be there.
Yeah.
So that is most of the time a part of what makes the ice as well. If they are participating without actual willingness, if they are thinking, this is a waste of my time, I should be in front of my computer writing emails or solving problems, then they are already standing 10 steps away from you. Which makes the room chill.
Yeah, and I think that's why also the icebreaker should not, in my mind, ever be the first step anyway. The first step is to communicate relevance, to communicate why this will be worthy of your time, and not necessarily in that specific sentence, this is why this will be worthy of your time, but in some way show, hey, we are here for a reason, and this is the reason, and this is the gain, and this is the value you will gain and this is how it will impact your life or your work. So really starting with that why, starting with that relevance. It's one of the things that on Train the Trainers we drill, like I torture people with it. I'm like, every feedback is like, did you give that clear why? Was it strong enough? Like by the end of it, people are like, enough with the why. But for me, it's really the key. It's what makes or breaks everything. Because even if somebody can get engaged more easily, maybe somebody is more playful, maybe they enjoy more playful activities, that engagement will not last. At some
Yes.
point, it will be enough of playing if there is no relevance behind it. And then there is also an aspect, is that icebreaker relevant as well? So first of all, are we in a relevant workshop? Is this the whole relevant conversation? And then also, is this first opening activity, is it relevant and why? And I think, as you're saying, phrasing is so important there. Like you said, can we get to know each other a bit more so we could, communicate better? I like to say also something like, let's make sure we set the right foundations by knowing this or that about others, or by understanding how everybody can contribute to this conversation or whatnot. So kind of like giving that frame that speaks to why do we need this, and that's not like, oh, let's just relax a bit. No, but that it's a bit more related to the goal, I would say.
And wonderful note you just mentioned is setting the right foundations, which is directly relevant with what are the expectations of the people participating this session? What do they want to go away with? So in our coaching sessions, one of the things we have to start with is setting out a contract between the coach and the client, which means understanding what both parties bring into a session and how can they make life easier for one another.
And what's their responsibility in a way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And in every training, in every session, be it online or in person, be it just 1 hour or 3 days long, people come with expectations, and no two people have the same set of expectations.
And often they
However,
come with concerns as part of that expectations. No.
yes, it might be a paid event, it might be a free event, it might be a sponsored event. But despite the financial part of it, they are bringing their time.
Yeah.
And that's so valuable. So one way or another, they want to make sure that their time is spent wisely.
Yeah. And I think there is also part of a trust there, because trust and credibility, because it's kind of like, am I showing up for the right workshop? And is this relevant for me? But then also, can this trainer provide me with that? Can they actually help me with that? Do they have the knowledge, the credibility, the expertise in terms of I don't have the right word, competence in terms of holding the process. So that can be more related to also the knowledge, but it can also be just related to competence of how we hold the space and design the process and so on. But I think that's exactly where Icebreaker can break that.
Yes.
That it's kind of like, if we go into this direction, they're kind of like, hey, this person is actually not creating an experience that feels relevant for me. So what would you say that makes icebreakers actually work, and what makes them fall flat? What are the key ingredients or traps to make it or break it in a way?
I think we already covered that thou shall not call it an icebreaker.
That's an easy one. That's a quick one to implement. Okay.
Yeah, so that one's put aside. What makes an icebreaker actually work is that it is the activities you put in order to break the ice, melt the ice, shake it up a little bit, and warm up the environment, whatever you call it or you don't call it. It needs to be designed for that audience. So just like your program, Trainer's Toolbox, we are expected to have a toolbox filled with a wide range of activities, wide range of questions, and like a magician's box, we should be able to pick something from the hat or the box that would work for that audience. And so a little bit of background check before we design the session, because who is going to join this? Especially if there's a registration process, then trying to understand through maybe a mini survey, quick questions before the session to understand what set of actions would work best for this audience. That definitely helps to make, ice breaking actually work, because you don't walk in blind.
Yeah. And I think the same thing that can be boring for one group can be really great for the other. Like, I know that in some environments, if you will have a group of 20 people and instead of icebreakers, you'll just go like, oh, let everybody share something about them. Everybody will die of boredom. Maybe they don't know each other. Maybe they don't have a common background. Maybe they're not like, that's a lot of time as well to go through 20 people and just kind of like, nobody can remember all of that, and it will get really boring really fast. But for example, in my scenario, I'll often work with a group of six or eight, because we do very practical, experiential, that they take over role of trainer for a period of time, get feedback and so on. And that will be like 2 days or something like that, but kind of immersive. So a bit longer time and very small group. For me, very often, the best type of icebreaker will be simply each person answering 2 or 3 simple questions about them, but questions with the angle that will show what is their background that's really interesting for others. And that will really set the stage that as they give each other feedback, as they watch each other's mini sessions, as they get see each other's approaches, this really gives them a different light over that. Plus, it builds a bit of curiosity of who else is in the room. We are all trainers. What kind of trainers are we doing? And it's the same activity that in different contexts, in different group size, in different backgrounds of people would get so boring so fast. And here it's almost the key to engagement, because everybody gets more curious based on that. And it's the same thing practically. So it's very, very, I agree with you. It's very audience based. It's very based on who is in the room and like what do they need to know about each other. And is it even relevant? Do they need to know about each other?
Exactly. Yes. I mean, do they actually need the answers to the question I'm asking?
Yes.
Just like you mentioned, are these activities or are these actions to warm everyone up a little bit and loosen the tension at the beginning, or maybe after lunch if it's a day-long session, because there will be a loss of concentration or a bit of lack of interest after lunch or after a coffee break. So instead of diving right into the curriculum, you may need to do additional activities to bring everyone back to the plenary, and keeping them relevant and showing how that actually feeds into the subject you are delivering a session on. One of the things I do is be careful about cross-cultural communication, especially with mixed groups, because even a sleight of hand might be misunderstood by a participant, whereas it can be perfectly a normal gesture for another. So if I have a group from different backgrounds, then it helps to start with clarifying and asking about how they react to certain movements. So what are in their culture accepted as offensive or appreciative. And through such an activity, you get them to move around, use their hands, and that addition of physical activity, physical movement brings them to the present. You end up ensuring that your participants are in fact in the session. They are present.
You engage the body a bit, but also maybe a bit of curiosity, because maybe somebody else shares something that's unusual for the other person. So kind of, I like that. You make them more mindful kind of through that. Cool. So how did you, you're saying there are, different group fits of different icebreakers. You want to start from the audience, you want to start from the group. But once you think about the group and you know the group, how do you choose the right thing, the right icebreaker for specific group or specific context? Specifically, what questions do you ask, when you're designing and you're picking the icebreaker or whatever the warm-up activity or whatever it is? What do you say to yourself? What do you ask to pick the right one?
We have these, set of open-ended questions like, what was the craziest thing you think you ever done? And that might open people up, or that might just shut them down, because they might not want to talk about the craziest thing they did when they were at university.
Yeah.
But when you use a question like that in connection with the specific theme of your training, if it's a leadership training, then take that question and match it with leadership and put it in the third person. It might be an example from someone else, so they don't become the object of the question. So sharing an experience which sets a leader apart for them. And then you can show that it resonates with the topic. So whatever their experience is, it would light up a bulb in other participants' minds as well. So having your set of questions and making sure that they are really visibly linked with the subject you are going to focus on in the remaining.
Love that.
And also making sure that you're not pushing people into talking, because it might feel really odd for some people if the trainer turns around and says, well, nobody seems to raise their hands, so I'm going to pick. And
I have a whole article on the blog on what's wrong about that. So I will actually
as soon as you say that, you see people sinking into their seats, trying to put on their invisibility cloak, right?
And not just that, it's also like, what is your role here? Who are you right now when you're asking in that way? You're not a facilitator, you're not a trainer, you're a teacher, you're a boss,
Yes.
So that's one thing. And then the second thing, why are they not answering? Shouldn't you ask what is the reason they're not answering and what is missing in this space that they're not willing to step up and answer? Is it missing the clarity of the process? Is it missing the motivation and the engagement because the question is not relevant? Is it just that they are not feeling safe yet? What do I need to fix in the environment instead of, pushing someone else to fix it for me? And in reality, they're just breaking it more by that, right?
And we started with building trust, right? We told them that this is a safe space.
And then we threw some ice on them.
And then we go there with our red teacher's pencil and say that wrong answer, you should have told this earlier.
And you answer to us.
You go and stand in the corner with one leg up and wait until you are back in the circle again.
Yeah, love that.
So we already know that our foundations are built on building trust, feeling safe in that environment, creating that psychological safety so that those shoulders are not hunched but loosened. And they feel they are welcome and that they can be a part of the conversation. And that takes a lot of effort.
Yeah.
So why turn around and give people a nasty nudge after all that effort?
Yeah, and I also hear you that somehow almost like we think that through icebreaker we will achieve a result of ice being melted or whatever.
Mhm.
But in reality, it's before the icebreaker that we need to melt it already
Yeah.
for people to be ready to engage with it. So everything from engagement to safety, it already needs to exist with how we open that activity and how we facilitate it. The safety and the engagement is not the result of the icebreaker. It's integral part of the whatever ice breaking or however you want to call it, warming up process that we design.
So what I do is, especially for in-person sessions, which I love, I'm more of an in-person session person in comparison to online delivery, um, is the addition of movement and color, and that a little bit of maybe using the sensory options, so that it's not just people sitting or standing in a room and talking about a subject, but people actually living an experience.
Love that. Do you have an
And
example, maybe, just to make it a bit more tangible for us?
yes, certainly. So, when you choose a venue, sometimes you don't have all the types of equipment to set it up the way you wish. You may not have the authority to move back chairs or, put it in a circle or, move around furniture much. So you're stuck with a certain structure. How can you make it warm and accommodating, inviting to the participants who are also coming there maybe for the first time? So we all love our post-its, right?
Of course, the trainer's best friend.
And when I was growing up, we only had yellow post-its. As I grew older, that gives my age out, but don't worry. We started having, some different colors of post-its as well. And that was like, wow, it does not only need to be yellow, because that's something you associated with post-its. They were yellow. And when you walk into a room that has some color that already has been set up, so that you take a look around and you see a preparation in advance to your session or training, then your brain is already inviting you to the session ahead.
It's kind of like
So,
it started.
yes, yes. And your curiosity is coming with you, which I love. You might see a post-it on a wall just as you walked in, and it would have a question about that day.
Yeah.
And then it initiates a conversation. I didn't do anything. I did not even start the session. But I put up a question there, and the person who walked into the room saw the post-it, read the question, and comes up to me. And here we are having a conversation.
Yeah, and it warms it up for them,
Yeah.
but I think it also gives you some valuable information about what are they coming with. Are they more guarded? Are they ready to engage? Are they somewhere in the middle? Are they critical of things and more skeptical? I think you get a lot of feedback also on how they step into that space and how they interact.
And that is fully 100% organic. And we
Yeah,
all love
yeah,
organic, right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, it's not like
We pay extra for organic.
yeah. Yeah, love that. Cool. Cool.
So yeah, a bit of working in advance, spending that additional, going that additional mile to accommodate the people when they are walking into the room, and finding small tricks to ensure they leave the outside world outside that session.
I like creating a gate
Yes,
in a way. Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, yeah, I love
Exactly.
that. A bit of rituals in some way. Yeah. I think one thing that can really help also with this for me is also to step into their shoes and think how will their entry be, or how
Mm-hmm.
would my entry be in this same setup? Because sometimes, some activity or some idea or even something about setting the space can sound like so much fun and such a cool idea and everything. Same with exercises in training. They sound so great until you try to actually go through them, and then you're like, actually, this is a painful question. Like the question with what's the craziest thing you've done. I love your adaptation, like third person and leadership context, and then what's the craziest thing you saw, encountered with other leaders. Totally makes it different question. But
Mm-hmm.
let's go with that question. What's the craziest thing you've done? It sounds like a fun question if you don't really think it through. If you're
Yeah.
not like, when you come into a new room, into a new group, and somebody's like, what's the craziest thing you've done? It's like, I don't know. What am I even supposed to answer? Am I supposed to be fun and crazy and perky and think of the wildest thing? And if yes, I don't feel crazy enough, probably. Or
Mm-hmm.
the opposite. I feel like whatever I answer, it's too much for this environment. And only when I actually try to answer that question can I feel how it's actually not such a good question. And I think it's the same with these other things. If I think of I'm entering the room and I'm seeing these post-its and questions, what would I be thinking? Would I
Mm-hmm.
be thinking, oh, this is interesting? Or would I be thinking, oh, too much options here? Or would I be thinking, oh, like, is this kindergarten too colorful? What is the right line of setting up that space? I think it really comes with seeing it through their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the best thing we can do when doing that design, to also really step into, okay, me as a participant, like how would I engage with this? And of course, not all of us are the same, so that doesn't give me all the answers, but still it shows me what some gaps might be that are not obvious to see when you're imagining it from outside, right?
When I was at secondary school, our literature teacher had told us that when we are writing an essay or, writing our university work in our later years, we should always take the reader by the hand and take them step by
I love
step.
that.
And that has really stuck with me over the years. And my background is in international development, which required a lot of writing, a lot of taking people by the hand and
Mhm.
walking them through different stages of a proposal, of a project, of a presentation. So I believe the same methodology applies to designing trainings, designing workshops, and running them. Because,
Mm.
first of all, you need to get everything set up. You need every different component, and then you need backup plans
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
that you don't freeze during the implementation. You have a plan B, you have a plan C, and
Ways to
as
shorten things, ways to open things more.
yeah, and
But
where to take a break because yes, you have an agenda. Let's say you have a 4-hour session and you decided in the agenda that you will take a break after the second hour, but you see the energy levels
mm,
dropping. You see, a loss of energy in the room. Take that break.
otherwise you're sticking with the format and killing the whole point and the
Exactly.
goal.
Add in a activity there that would boost that energy, that would bring in a different perspective to the question they are handling. Because
Mm,
you are the trainer, you have this toolbox, and
mm,
you know your subject.
And you want to really focus on that goal of where you want to
Yeah,
get them, not on that agenda of what are the steps on the way, and then just like walking and not thinking of the destination. Yeah.
exactly. So yeah, it's your show, and it's your brick of Legos. You know which pieces would fit, and
Mm.
when you see that it's being forced, then just remove it and use another piece because they're all
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah, and I love seeing it also from this perspective of emotion. Like, which emotion are we creating for them when they show up, or which
Mhm.
emotion might they come with, and how will that fit with the environment we are building, and what will be that emotional journey to support that. But that's a whole new topic now, and not to diverge too much. I will link it though to this episode. There, I did one podcast episode on openings and
Mhm.
one on emotions in training. So I will also link them up because I think even though we're talking about icebreakers, these topics are so one pulls in another and they're so
Yeah.
connected. But to go back to our topic, not to diverge too much, as I mentioned, I really like when we keep it practical, especially for new trainers, but also
Yeah.
for experienced trainers who are maybe used to their ways and can use a new tip or a new perspective. I wanted to ask what would be your best tips, just two or three
Mhm.
practical tips, what to really keep in mind when both designing and facilitating sort of, let's still call it icebreaker, but some sort of warm up
Mhm.
activity, entrance into the room, and so on.
So, one of the things to always keep in mind is, I suppose, the KISS method.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it simple.
That's not kissing your participants as they enter. Not that one.
Keeping it simple.
Mm,
When you try to overcomplicate an activity, when you want to add components and writing and moving and jumping around the room all in one activity, that is too much.
mm,
You are abusing the time that is being given to you. So
mm,
keep it simple and use that time and space to your advantage.
mm,
You are setting up a game for the participants to come and take up their roles. So when you are thinking about how can I bring them into the room and get started with warming them up or breaking the ice or melting the ice or make them
mm,
open their arms and participate, then one of the key questions is what would help me to join in.
mm. I love that. Love that. Yes, it's not like you're the provider of the space, you're part of the space.
Yes. And how would I feel if this was the activity in
Mm,
this set of, surroundings?
And what would my concerns be, maybe, and what
Mhm.
would my not boundaries, but like the reservations
My
be?
reservations, my
Yeah.
prejudices. Yes, there was this instance where I joined an online session and the facilitator directly sent us to breakout rooms. It was like, get to know one another. Uh, why? What's going on?
It's like going on a date you did not sign up for.
And also, there was like no guidance on what are we supposed to do in that breakout room. Just introduce ourselves or
Yeah, this is like,
talk
let me
about the
dump my
weather.
problem on someone else. That's the methodology behind it.
Yeah,
Let me outsource.
yeah. So that facilitator made it our problem to come up with something to talk
Yeah,
for 5 minutes
yeah,
in the breakout room. But quite a lot of the people who were participating in that session felt left out
yeah.
because there were no clear instructions, which is another very important factor.
Mm,
Make sure there's clarity.
mm,
And there's no shame in asking whether it's being clear.
Yeah, and in
Whether
fact,
there
it's
was,
one of the best habits you can develop as whatever you give as instructions, is it clear? Is it clear? Is it clear? No.
and use the rule of three repetitions,
Mm-hmm.
going back to things in, three times to make sure that, it's being covered and
Mm-hmm.
everyone has heard.
Ideally in written, one of them being that chat or a flip chart, but giving that visual support.
And maybe last but not least, we can say, which I find very valuable, be a part of the conversation. So don't be just a
Mm-hmm.
spectator.
Okay, okay. I like that.
So be a part of it. So if it is about one crazy thing a leader did and it affected your participants, have your answer ready.
Okay, I like that. Yeah, for me, it's a bit of a choice always.
Mm-hmm.
If I feel it's not relevant for me to
Mm-hmm.
be part of that conversation, then I prefer not to take the space and time, but also not to make it into, competitive. Is my answer
Yeah.
better or worse and whatnot? But if it's at all vulnerable, then I
Mm-hmm.
will go first. If it's like, what's the biggest mess up you make, or which is not the classical question you would ask, but let's say it's something that requires a bit of vulnerability, then I'll
Yeah.
usually go first. But if it's more like your average question, a bit about you, digging in,
Mm-hmm.
then I won't always necessarily share it because I will wonder, is it relevant or useful also in terms of time investment? But
Yeah,
that's
you don't
interesting.
necessarily have to go first,
Mm.
but if you are asking a question, then your participants also have the right to ask you back.
I like
Uh,
that.
be ready for it and be open about it.
Mm.
Don't be the trainer or the facilitator who sits over there and just asks
Out
the
of the
question.
circle. Yeah, I hear you.
So
Cool.
maybe these tips might be helpful
Cool.
for other trainers and facilitators out there.
Cool. Let me throw in one more tip that I feel like it's super, or two actually that I feel are very important for
Yes,
me.
please do.
One is to keep that goal orientation in mind. And what I mean by that, to go back to that question, how much trust and connection does this group really need? Because if we
Mhm.
are here to talk for 2 hours about some topic that's not vulnerable at all, and it's not that much that they need the depth about the others, then let's not spend time on that. They don't need to be
Mhm.
best friends. No, then we just need to warm up the space a little bit so we can actually have that conversation. But if we want to have more depth, more vulnerability, if we have a topic that's like, I don't know, self compassion or digging really into our values and goals, then we need a bit more. We need maybe, and maybe we need safety from others. Maybe we need more curiosity about others because that will actually give us better answers. So I
Mhm.
would really start by asking, what does this group need? What is the goal of building that space that best serves my learning goal? And then that's where I'm going to build that initial. So to be very kind of not just being the goal is to warm people up. No, what should they be? What is the emotion? Should they be vulnerable? Should they be interested? Should they be curious? Should they feel we are efficient? Should they feel this is giving them value very fast, or that this is cozy open space where they have all the space they need? With different things. And I
Mhm.
think we want to be super sharp, clear on that goal. And that goal always inherits the learning goal
Yeah.
and serves the learning goal. The second thing, to keep it short, we like to call this emotional striptease. It's basically saying going gradual, but do keep deepening the conversation
Mhm.
because otherwise you're not building safer space if every question, if every activity is on the same level of depth. But so do keep deepening with every step, with every activity you add, with every question you add, do keep going deeper, but also be very mindful to do it in a very gradual way, not to be like, hence called emotional striptease, start with the necktie first, not with the bra, no, basically this,
Yes,
yeah,
and it's a wonderful way of looking at it. Emotional striptease. I will keep that in mind. I was just going to say that don't go into a session acting like Thor and with his sledgehammer go like, "Yay! I don't want any ice in this room."
yeah,
No, walk in and read the room.
yeah, love that. Yeah.
read the room and adapt accordingly.
Love that. And are there any traps? We covered quite many, but are there any traps still on your mind? Something we should be mindful not to do or to avoid? Or I think everything, the answer, as with everything in facilitation, is always it depends. But still, what is something that's maybe a trap in many situations, or maybe a little danger for us to keep in mind?
Maybe I can say the attitude of people when they are coming to a session. So sometimes we end up having difficult participants or difficult clients, but the way to handle such difficulty is to dig a little bit deeper and understand where that attitude is coming from.
What's the need behind it, or
Because most of the time, that layer of defense, that wall they have built up and that they brought into the session with them, is not personal. So it's not towards me, it's not towards you.
Yeah.
And it helps a lot to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I love that. And whenever we feel we can't connect with someone, or that to some point they're rebellious or they're resistant, I think the question is always, how can I lean in more? How can I understand better? Not how
Yes,
can I push them in the direction which I want them to go, or why are they so mean? But really
because
that more
clashing
openness.
doesn't help.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, clashing doesn't help.
Yeah.
So it helps to take a step back and try to understand where that strict reservation or that lack of interest to participate is coming from. And what is there in your toolbox to help you with that?
Love that. And it makes me think also how much this is about self-management as well. And how much very often, like, what should be the first thing you do when icebreaker goes wrong? Well, take a few deep breaths. Get your brain back, get your cognitive abilities back, then think of solving the issue. Which also makes me think, how do you prepare in terms of, if you have a bit of, you're experimenting with something new, you're stepping into a session that you have no full control over, you don't know participants, you don't know the venue. What is kind of your way of working with that?
When I am designing a session for people I've not met before, I go back to the drawing board. I try to use different components that would mix well and that would not mix at all.
Okay.
And then I have my, let's say, trusted group, and I test things on them. So we do mini sessions, and I get their feedback from 3 people that I trust very much. And I use their feedback to make minor adjustments. And I do have a bit of a, meditation prior to each session I run, because it's like going onto the stage. The spotlight is on you, and sometimes the cat.
Speaking of spotlight.
And there is a high level of expectation for you to perform without making a mistake. So it helps to have that mini meditation, maybe 5 minutes, maybe longer the day before.
Way to get grounded. And
yes, to ground yourself and to play with your switches, because we in a manner of speaking have different switches that affect how we appear in different circumstances.
yeah.
So find your trainer switch and activate that, and be present as the trainer who has put in so much work into the preparation and design and set your, most of the time right foot forward,
Yeah, love that.
with that character ready to act.
I don't know if you ever read a bit about this, how athletes prepare often for their like big competitions or something like that. And there is always this mention of little rituals they have, like doing few things always in exactly the same order and the same way. Like, I don't know, the way they put the shirt on or off or whatever, the song that they listen. I think it's really nice to think also in terms of this, what rituals can we build for us? Sounds like you have a solid one for yourself. I think that's a good one, maybe to think a little bit, what is my ritual to prepare?
Yeah, and we all need that, support mechanism to help us show up as our best self.
Yeah, love that. Okay, so I do want to mention one more episode from Trainer's Toolbox podcast that quite ties into what we're talking now, and then we'll go into a few more final quick questions. There is an episode 19 that's about self-check-in, and it basically explores the topic of how can you be a bit more mindful of our own energy, of what we come in, what we show up with, how can we manage that a bit better. So I do want to invite everyone to tie that topic into this topic, because I think to show up and to frame that beginning of the session and the icebreaker and everything, it really starts also with what are we bringing in. Because if I'm in the room and I'm panicking about how the room is not set well enough, and I'm like, fighting my flip charts and people are entering and I'm like, in my anti-zone, then that's not how that's how I'm going to set up the space. So I really want to start from what is my energy, how am I entering, how am I getting grounded and kind of owning that space. And that, I think, really starts with self-management.
Yeah,
Now,
and I will be delivering a webinar for femme palettes, coaches, and mentors in June on a very similar subject, really, how to take care of ourselves as a coach, to show up and then also be present, but also to do that self-care.
we can link it up then in the episode description as well for people to check out and explore that topic. I think it's very important one, totally different than icebreakers, but very important one. Speaking of which, I think Hande, people have much more to learn from you than about icebreakers. So would you like to share with us just a little bit on where else can people find you? What is the good place to learn from you or to work with you? What are some of the online places where we can stalk on your wisdom?
Well, let's start with LinkedIn, because I do try to keep an active profile on LinkedIn. And when the question comes of, what do you do? What is it that you deliver? Is I specialize in tailored learning experiences. So most of the work I do is either one-on-one coaching, one-on-one training, or very small groups. So that we focus on impactful learning, not just ticking off the box.
Love that. So if you just want to tick the box, don't call neither of us.
Yes,
like that.
That's true, because everyone's time is very valuable. And it is a key resource that does not come back. So if people are interested in building their capacities when it comes to communication, leadership skills, and career navigation, or impactful design of their lives and careers, then I would very much be interested in collaborating in their learning journey, because it's an investment that goes both ways.
Well, love it. So we're going to link up your LinkedIn. We're going to link up your website, and
Yes, that
we'll
would
see
be
what else
great.
we find. So check the episode description for more places to find all of this.
Yeah, and living in Berlin, it makes it easier to meet people in person within the EU. And I'm originally from Turkey, so I do travel back and forth as often as I like. and it gives me, good enough reach geographically.
Cool, love that. As we said, in-person events are always a plus. Cool. One final question, one we always close with, is basically, what is your ultimate tip? And what I mean by that is, we don't know who is listening. Maybe it's trainers, maybe it's facilitators, maybe they're more experienced, maybe they're new. But what is one tip or one wish you would kind of want all of us as trainers and facilitators to really keep always on top of mind? One thing that you feel is really important in the world of facilitation, something you would like to see even more of, your so-called ultimate tip. It can be about icebreakers or in general.
I would like to say, trust your intuition. Yes, you will be very well prepared. You will have your note cards and sheets of paper, your presentations and everything. But when you meet your group, trust your intuition. And maybe it will tell you to change a couple of things. You don't need to stick to the script.
Love that.
Be yourself, be present, and remember that you know what you're talking about.
Love that. And when you're acting from grounded space and like more present space, you can figure out much more depth than when you prepare the best agenda and then stick with it.
Exactly. So agile comes into play when you can make yourself be present at the moment.
Cool. Love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh,
See
it's
you in
been my
LinkedIn World.
pleasure.
We hang out there anyway, so come hang out with us also on LinkedIn. And thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for giving the time, Mirna.
Thank you for exploring this topic with me. I hope you found some exciting ideas and valuable tools that you will use already today. Remember, they only work if you put them in practice. But then they make all the difference. If you enjoy Trainers Toolbox podcast, do leave a rating and review. It does mean a lot. And if you haven't done it yet, click on the links in the episode descriptions and discover free materials and valuable resources to dive in deeper. See you in the next episode or at Trainers Toolbox newsletter.